Chapter 1. The Weight of Darkness. The rain tasted like iron and regret. Ilara stumbled through the forest, her walking stick catching on exposed roots that seemed to writhe beneath her feet. 3 days since she'd fled the sanatorium. 3 days since she'd overheard Dr. Harwick's plan to sell her to the collectors, men who paid handsomely for women with peculiar sensitivities. Her blindness had always made her vulnerable, but the visions that came with it, the inexplicable knowing of people's true natures, had made her valuable, dangerous. The storm swallowed her footsteps. She'd long ago learned to navigate by sound and texture, by the way air moved against her skin, but this forest felt wrong. The trees pressed too close, their branches scraping overhead like skeletal fingers. She could sense something watching, not the passive observation of woodland creatures, but an ancient, deliberate attention that made her skin prickle. Her stick struck something solid. Not wood, lost. The voice came from directly before her, smooth as aged whiskey and cold as December wind. Ilara jerked backward, nearly losing her footing. She'd heard no approach, no breath, no heartbeat. Her supernatural sensitivity flared, a skill she'd inherited from her grandmother, the ability to perceive the emotional truth beneath flesh. But when she reached toward this presence with that inner sense, she met a void wrapped in centuries of sorrow. Not human. "I'm not lost," she lied, lifting her chin. "I'm traveling, in a storm, through Thornwood Forest, alone and blind." Amusement threaded through his words, but beneath it, she felt something else. Curiosity. Either you're remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. Perhaps both. Lightning cracked overhead, and in its aftermath, Ilara felt the displacement of air as he moved, circling her like a wolf appraising prey. "What are you?" Silence. Then quietly, "What do you think I am?" Her grandmother's warnings whispered through memory. When you meet something that casts no emotional shadow, run. But her legs trembled with exhaustion, her soaked dress clung to her frame, and she could sense no malice in him, only a vast, aching emptiness. "You're not human," she said. "You don't breathe like we do. Your presence feels old. Very old. Perceptive." He stepped closer. She could smell him now, night-blooming jasmine and something metallic. Blood. "And you're not afraid. Should I be?" "Most are." His voice dropped. "I am Lucian Ashford, and yes, you should run. But you won't make it to the forest's edge before you collapse." Ashford. The name resonated with power, with history. Ilara's grandmother had spoken of the old houses, vampire dynasties that had ruled territories for millennia. The Ashfords were supposed to be extinct, destroyed in the purge of 1847. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. "I am dead. I have been for 347 years. Fabric rustled as he removed something. His coat, she realized, as heavy wool settled across her shoulders. It radiated impossible warmth. "But if you mean the rumors of my house's extinction, those were exaggerated. I'm the last." The coat smelled like him, like centuries and starlight. Ilara's fingers tightened in the fabric. "Why help me?" "Because you're the first person in 2 decades to speak to me without trembling." Something bitter edged his words. "And because you'll die of exposure within the hour if you remain out here." She should refuse. Should continue stumbling through the storm toward whatever dubious safety awaited beyond these trees. But her body had reached its limit, and some instinct deeper than fear told her this creature, this vampire, meant her no immediate harm. "Where would you take me?" "My estate." "Thornwood Manor." He paused. "You would be safe there. From the storm, from whatever you're running from." "How do you know I'm running?" "Because I've spent centuries learning to recognize desperation." His voice softened. "And you wear it like a second skin." Ilara's legs finally betrayed her. She swayed, and cold hands caught her before she fell, hands that held her with surprising gentleness. Her supernatural sense pressed against him again, seeking, and this time she felt something slip through the void. Loneliness. Profound, soul-crushing loneliness. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. She felt his shock ripple through the space between them. For a long moment, He simply held her, rain streaming around them like tears. "Then you're the first," Lucian Ashford whispered, "and possibly the last." He lifted her into his arms with inhuman ease, and as consciousness began to slip away, Alara heard him add, so quietly she almost missed it, "Welcome to Thornwood, peculiar girl." Try not to die here, darkness claimed her, warmer than it had any right to be. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Shadows. Alara woke to silk. The fabric whispered against her skin as she stirred, sheets far finer than anything she'd felt in the sanatorium's stiff institutional beds. Warmth surrounded her, the crackle of a fireplace nearby, and beneath it all, the profound silence of a place that had forgotten how to breathe. She sat up slowly, orienting herself through touch and sound. The bed was massive, four-postered, its curtains drawn back. Her walking stick leaned against the nightstand. He'd thought to bring it. Her ruined dress had been replaced with a nightgown of soft cotton that definitely wasn't hers. "You're awake." Lucian's voice came from across the room, near what she assumed was a window. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd sleep through the entire day." "Day?" Ilara's fingers found the edge of the bed, grounding herself. "How long was I unconscious?" 14 hours. Your fever broke around dawn." The rustle of fabric suggested he'd moved, though again she'd heard no footsteps. "You were hypothermic. I took the liberty of having Mrs. Thorne, my housekeeper, change your clothes and tend to you." "Mrs. Thorne." Alara tested the name. "Is she human, elderly, discreet?" A pause. "And adequately compensated for her silence?" Alara's supernatural sense reached outward, mapping the room through emotional residue. The space was vast. A master bedroom, perhaps, though it felt unused. Dust scent clung to the corners despite the fire's warmth, but beneath the physical details, she felt something else. Layers of sorrow soaked into the walls like old bloodstains. "This was someone's room," she said quietly. "Someone you cared for." Silence stretched between them. When Lucian finally spoke, his voice had hardened. "You perceive too much. It's what I am." Alara swung her legs over the bed's edge, finding the floor with bare feet. Cold marble. My grandmother called it the site, though I've always thought that an ironic name, given my condition. "Your condition." Curiosity warmed his tone. "You were born blind?" "Since I was 6. Scarlet fever." She stood, using the bed as an anchor, but the sight came after. "My grandmother said sometimes loss opens doors that should remain closed. I can sense what people truly are beneath their masks, their emotional truth. And what do you sense from me?" Alara turned toward his voice, reaching out with that inner awareness. Again she encountered that vast emptiness. But now, standing in his domain, she could perceive the edges of it. Not void, but rather an absence so profound it had calcified into armor. "Loneliness," she whispered, "so deep it's become part of your bones. And beneath that, guilt. You carry the weight of centuries like stones in your pockets." The air pressure changed. He'd moved directly before her with that impossible vampire speed, close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his body. "You should fear me," Lucian said, and for the first time, she heard genuine warning in his voice. "Whatever gift you possess, whatever you think you perceive, I am not some misunderstood creature from a penny dreadful. I've killed thousands. I've orchestrated wars. The name Lucian Ashford once made emperors pale. I know." Alara didn't step back. "I can feel their deaths clinging to you like cobwebs. But I also feel that you haven't killed in a very long time. Decades, perhaps. 37 years. The admission came reluctantly, since I realized the weight of immortality isn't the endless time. It's the endless memory." Thunder rumbled outside, and Alara became aware of the storm's continuation. She could hear rain lashing against windows, wind howling through eaves. Thornwood Manor creaked around them like a ship at sea. "Why did you really bring me here?" she asked. "I told you, no, the real reason." She tilted her head. "You could have simply directed me to shelter. Instead, you carried me to your private estate, placed me in what I suspect is your own bedroom, and stationed yourself here watching over me while I recovered. Why?" A beat of silence, then barely audible. "Because you spoke to me without fear. and I haven't heard my name spoken without terror in longer than you've been alive." The honesty in those words struck her like a physical blow. Ilara's hand rose unconsciously, and her fingers brushed fabric, his shirt. She felt him go absolutely still beneath her touch, every muscle locked. "You're cold," she observed. "Like marble. I'm dead." But he didn't move away. "My heart beats perhaps once per hour. Just enough to circulate the blood I consume." Blood. Ilara's fingers traced upward, finding his collarbone, his throat. No pulse. "Do you need to feed? Is that why I'm here?" "No." The word came sharp. "I feed from willing donors in the village. Paid arrangements, consensual." His hand caught her wrist, gently but firm. "I don't prey on vulnerable women I find in forests." "Then what do you want from me?" His fingers tightened fractionally. "I don't know yet. But when you said you weren't afraid?" He released her, stepping back. "No one has said that to me in longer than I can remember. And I find myself reluctant to let you walk back into whatever darkness you're fleeing." A door opened somewhere below, footsteps on stairs. Human, elderly, labored. Mrs. Thorne, presumably. "The storm will last another day," Lucian said, his voice returning to that careful neutrality. "Rest. Recover. When it passes, I'll have a carriage take you wherever you need to go." But even as he spoke, Ilara felt something else trembling in the air between them. A recognition, perhaps. A sense that her stumbling into Thornwood Forest hadn't been accident but inevitability. "And if I don't want to go?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence, then, impossibly soft. "Then I suspect we're both in terrible danger." Chapter 3. The Naming of Monsters. Mrs. Thorne proved to be exactly as Lucian described, elderly, efficient, and utterly unflappable about the vampire employing her. "Been with the Ashford family 40 years, she said, guiding Ilara through the manor's corridors with a firm hand at her elbow. "Lord Lucian's been nothing but a gentleman, despite what the stories say. Now the library's just ahead. He thought you might enjoy the Braille collection his mother assembled." His mother. Ilara filed that detail away, adding it to the growing portrait of Lucian Ashford. Not simply a monster, but a son, an inheritor of history. The library smelled of leather and old paper, with underlying notes of pipe tobacco and beeswax. Mrs. Thorne settled Ilara into a chair near what must have been another fireplace, the third she'd encountered in the manor. Apparently Lucian kept his residence uncomfortably warm for her benefit. "I'll bring tea shortly," Mrs. Thorne said. "Though I warn you, Lord Lucian's likely to join you. He's been pacing like a caged wolf since you woke." After the housekeeper departed, Ilara let her supernatural sense expand through the library. The emotional residue here felt different. Curiosity, hunger for knowledge, but also profound sadness. She could almost see the ghost image of a younger Lucian, human still, poring over books in candlelight. "That was my favorite chair." She didn't startle this time. She was learning the peculiar quality of his silence, the way he inhabited space without disturbing it. "You were human once," Ilara said. "You remember what it was like. 347 years ago." Lucian's footsteps approached. He was allowing himself to be heard this time, she realized. "A courtesy. Sometimes I think I remember. Other times humanity feels like something I read about in books. Tell me." She turned toward his voice. "How does one become a vampire? Is this morbid curiosity or something else?" "Education," Ilara smiled slightly. "If I'm to stay in a manor with one of the old ones, I should understand the rules." "Stay," he repeated softly. "You've decided then?" The storm hasn't ended. But they both knew she meant something more. "And I suspect whatever I was fleeing has followed me here. I felt something while you were watching me sleep. A sharp intake of breath. Unnecessary for a creature who didn't need to breathe, which meant it was reflexive, emotional. You felt them. Not a question." Lucian moved to the window and she heard curtains being drawn. "House Corvus. They've been circling Thornwood's borders for 3 days. Ice flooded Ilara's veins. "Why? I don't know yet. But they're not here for me. They're here for you. He paused. What exactly are you running from, Alara? She'd given him her name at some point, she realized. Perhaps while fevered, Dr. Harwick sold information about me. About my bloodline. Her fingers tightened on the chair's arms. My grandmother was Alara Thorne. Thorne, Lucian's voice went sharp. The seer of Canterbury. The one who ended the house wars by identifying the vampire lord's true names. Her granddaughter. Yes. Alara's supernatural sense caught his shock, his sudden understanding, and beneath it, fear. I inherited her gift, though it manifests differently. I can't see names written in blood like she could, but I can perceive truth. Essential nature. And apparently, that makes me valuable to vampire houses who've lost members to name bindings. Silence stretched. When Lucian finally spoke, his voice had gone cold. House Corvus lost their patriarch to your grandmother's testimony. He was bound and executed in 1889. They've been seeking revenge for over a century. And now they've found his last descendant. You should have told me. You're a vampire. Alara stood, heat rising in her chest. Why would I trust you with the very information that makes me pray? Because I'm not them. The words came savage. I'm the last of Ashford because I refuse to play the house's games. I've been alone for 97 years because I wouldn't bind humans into service or war with other vampires over territory. He crossed to her, and she felt his cold presence like winter incarnate. And I sure as hell won't let Corvus take you. Why? The question burst out. Why do you care? Because you're not afraid of me, he said simply. And that matters more than it should. Glass shattered somewhere below. Both of them froze. They're here, Lucienne breathed, inside the wards. How, Mrs. Thorne? Alara's supernatural sense flared, catching the wrongness before conscious thought formed. She's been here 40 years. Long enough to be compromised. Lucian's hand found hers, ice cold and firm. They must have gotten to her family. Leverage. She'd never betray me willingly. Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets moving with inhuman speed. The servants' passage, Lucian said urgently, behind the third bookshelf. It leads to the catacombs. I won't leave you two. Listen to me. His hands framed her face, and she felt the tremor in them. House Corvus doesn't want me. They want you. If you stay, you give them exactly what they're after. But if you run, if you survive, you rob them of their revenge. And you? I'm already dead, remember? A bitter smile colored his voice. But you're not. So run, Alara Thorne. And when this is over, if I survive, find me. How? He pressed something into her hand. Cold metal, circular, a ring. My signet, he whispered. My true name is bound to it. Keep it safe, and I'll always be able to find you. The library door exploded inward. Run! Lucian shoved her toward the bookshelf. She heard the passage grind open, smelled damp stone. Hello, Ashford, a voice like broken glass said. We've come for the seer's blood. Alara ran into darkness. Lucian's ring clutched tight, his roar of defiance echoing behind her. Chapter 4. Blood and Binding, the Catacombs Beneath. Thornwood Manor stretched like stone veins through the earth. Alara fled blindly, ironically appropriate, her walking stick abandoned in the library. But here, in absolute darkness, her disability became advantage. She navigated by echo and air current, by the scrape of her fingers against damp walls, while above, the sounds of battle raged. Lucian was fighting. She could hear crashes, roars, the wet sound of violence, and beneath it, something worse. His pain, bleeding through the supernatural awareness that still connected them. He'd given her his ring, his true name, and somehow that had forged a link between them. She felt when they wounded him. The sensation drove her to her knees, ice fire tearing through her shoulder, her side. He was being overwhelmed, outnumbered. She could sense other presences now, cold voids like his, but threaded through with malice. House Corvus had sent at least 5 vampires. Run, his voice whispered through her mind, or perhaps through the ring. Please. But Alara's grandmother had taught her something else alongside the sight. Thorn women didn't flee. They saw truth, spoke truth, and when necessary, bound monsters with it. She reached the end of the passage, a dead end apparently, though her searching fingers found grooves in the stone. Letters. She traced them. Here lie the bones of House Ashford. May they rest, a tomb. Lucian had sent her to his family's tomb. Above, something crashed. A scream, Mrs. Thorne. Ilara's heart seized. The elderly woman had been compromised, yes, but not willingly. House Corvus had used her, and now they were killing everyone in their path. Her fingers found the ring, slipped it onto her thumb. It pulsed with cold fire. I won't let them destroy you, she thought fiercely, unsure if he could hear. Not for me, not for my grandmother's sins. The ring burned colder, and suddenly Ilara understood. True names gave power over vampires. Her grandmother had testified against Corvus's patriarch by speaking his true name in open court, allowing him to be bound and executed. But the inverse was also true. Knowing a vampire's true name allowed for protection, for calling, for Lucian Ashford, she whispered into the darkness. I summon you by your true name. I bind you not to servitude, but to survival. I command you. Live. The ring exploded with light she couldn't see but felt. Power rushing up from the catacombs through stone and bone into the battle above. She heard Lucian's gasp, felt his shock ripple through their connection. What have you done? Saved you, she thought back. Now finish this. The quality of violence changed above her. Lucian's rage crystallized into something else. Purpose, power drawn from the very foundations of Thornwood. This was his territory, his ancestral land, and she'd just invoked his true name in the heart of his family tomb. She'd given him a command backed by blood right and ancient magic. Liv Corvus's vampires never stood a chance. The battle ended within minutes. Silence descended, broken only by dripping water and her own ragged breathing. Ilara waited, the ring cooling on her thumb, wondering if she'd just made a terrible mistake. Footsteps on stone, slow, labored. Lucian descended into the catacombs, and even without sight, Ilara knew he was badly wounded. His cold presence flickered like a dying flame. You shouldn't have done that, he said, voice rough with pain. Binding me with my true name. Do you understand what power you now hold? I didn't bind you. Ilara stood, turning toward him. I gave you a command to live. That's all. That's everything. He was close now, and she felt his blood. Cold, viscous, not quite dead, dripping onto stone. You could command me to do anything now. To serve you, to kill for you, to live, she interrupted firmly. That's the only command I gave, and the only one I'll ever give. Your life is your own, Lucian Ashford. Silence. Then so quietly, why? Because you saved me first. Her hand rose, seeking, and found his chest. Her fingers came away wet. You're hurt, badly. I'll heal. Slowly, but... He swayed, and Ilara realized with horror that he was about to collapse. How do you heal? She caught him, his weight impossible and cold. Blood do you need to feed? I have stores, but you're too weak to reach them. Understanding crystallized, and House Corvus likely destroyed whatever you kept in the manor. That's why they're not pursuing. They expect you to weaken and die down here. Her jaw set. Then feed from me. Absolutely not. You said consent matters. I'm giving consent. She guided him toward the wall, helping him sit. Unless your pride is more important than your survival. It's not pride. His hand caught her wrist. Once I taste your blood, I'll be bound to you in a different way. A vampire feeding from someone wearing his true name creates a bond that can't be broken. Ever. You'd be tied to me for the rest of your existence. And you're 23 years old with a full human life ahead of you. Bitterness threaded his words. You don't want to shackle yourself to a monster. Ilara's free hand found his face, tracing the sharp planes, the cold skin. I'm blind, fleeing from those who'd use me and hunted by vampires. What life do I have without you? She leaned closer. Feed, Lucian. Let me save you the way you saved me. His control shattered. Cold lips pressed against her wrist, and she felt the sharp pressure of fangs, then ice fire as he drank. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock, and suddenly Alara could feel everything. His pain, his hunger, his desperate loneliness, and beneath it all, his dawning, terrified hope. "I'm not afraid," she thought through their connection. "I choose this." His emotions crashed over her like a wave. Gratitude, anguish, and something else. Something that felt dangerously like devotion. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Trust. They remained in the catacombs for 2 days while Lucienne healed. Alara learned the rhythms of vampire recovery, the way his cold flesh gradually warmed where she touched him, how his breathing, unnecessary but reflexive, grew steadier as her blood strengthened him. She learned, too, that feeding created an intimacy beyond the physical. Through their bond, she felt his emotions as clearly as her own, and he hers. It was terrifying, and profoundly less lonely than she'd ever been. "Tell me about your mother," she said on the second night, running her fingers through his hair. They'd arranged themselves against the tomb wall, her lap serving as his pillow while his strength returned. The position should have felt awkward, but the bond made such concerns obsolete. She could feel his comfort, his quiet gratitude for simple touch. "Why?" His voice rumbled against her knee. "Because this tomb holds her bones, doesn't it? And you loved her enough to send me to the safest place you knew." Alara traced the shell of his ear. What was she like? Silence stretched. Then, fearless. "She was the daughter of a merchant, married my father for love rather than title." The other nobles mocked her. A pause, until she organized the village's defense during the plague of 1702. She saved hundreds through quarantine protocols and herbal remedies. After that, they called her the Iron Lady of Thornwood. "You admired her." "I was 24 when she died." "Consumption." His hand found Alara's, threading their fingers together. "I became a vampire 3 years later, trying to find a cure for the disease that had taken her. I made a bargain with an old one, vampire blood in exchange for medical knowledge." Bitterness colored his tone. "I got the knowledge, but by then, there was no one left to save." Alara felt the weight of that grief through their bond, a wound that had never healed, even across 3 centuries. "That's why you stopped killing. Why you withdrew from the house wars. You became a vampire to save lives, and instead, I ended them." He sat up slowly, turning to face her. "For decades, I told myself it was necessary. Survival, the natural order of predator and prey. But the memories accumulated, Alara. Every face, every plea, every final breath." His cold hand cupped her cheek. 37 years ago, I killed a young woman in an alley. She was blind like you. And as she died, she said, 'I'm not afraid. God will welcome me.'" His voice cracked. "I realized I'd become the very monster my mother would have fought against." "So you stopped." "So I became a ghost. I withdrew to Thornwood, lived off consensual arrangements, and tried to atone for sins that could never be forgiven." His thumb traced her cheekbone, "Until you stumbled into my forest and spoke to me without fear." Alara leaned into his touch. "I wasn't brave. I was exhausted and desperate. You faced down a vampire with nothing but a walking stick and your sharp tongue." She felt his smile through the bond. "That's courage, Alara Thorn." They fell silent, the weight of confession settling between them. Through their bond, Alara felt Lucien's emotional landscape with painful clarity. Centuries of loneliness, the fresh wound of Mrs. Thorne's betrayal. He'd found her body in the kitchen, killed by Corvus when she'd tried to protect him. And beneath it all, a fragile hope that terrified him. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "House Corvus won't stop. They know you're here and they know I'm weakened." His hand slipped from her face. "When I'm strong enough, I'll escort you to the coast. There are ships to America, territories where Corvus's influence doesn't reach. You could start over, and I'll remain at Thornwood. This is my territory, my responsibility." He paused. "The bond between us will attenuate with distance. Given time, you'll barely feel my presence. You'll be free." The word felt like a lie. Ilara's supernatural sense, amplified now by their blood bond, perceived the truth beneath his words. Lucian intended to sacrifice himself. He would remain at Thornwood, draw Corvus's attention, and ensure they never followed her to America, He planned to die for her. No, Ilara said firmly. Ilara, I won't let you sacrifice yourself. She turned toward him, her hands finding his shoulders. You gave me your true name. That means I can command you, remember? You said you'd never use it that way. Alarm sharpened his voice. I won't. But I will fight you on this with every breath I have. Her fingers tightened. You've been alone for 97 years, Lucian. You've punished yourself for crimes you've spent decades atoning for. When does it end? When do you get to live instead of merely existing? When I've earned it. You've already earned it. The words burst out. You saved me. You fed me, sheltered me, protected me from House Corvus, even though doing so made you their target. You've been nothing but honorable. She leaned closer until their foreheads touched. You told me once that I perceive truth. So hear this truth. You are not the monster you think you are. Through their bond, she felt his emotions crack open, hope and anguish warring. Ilara, we fight together, she continued. Or we run together. But I won't let you face Corvus alone while I flee to safety. She pulled back, her expression fierce despite her blindness. I'm not afraid of you, Lucian Ashford. And I'm not afraid of them either. He caught her face in both hands, and through their bond, Ilara felt the moment his resolve crumbled. You're going to be the death of me. You're already dead, remember? She smiled. So I suppose I'm going to be the life of you instead. His laugh startled them both, raw and genuine, the first true laughter he'd experienced in decades. And when he kissed her forehead, gentle as a prayer, Ilara felt something shift between them. Not just attraction, not merely gratitude, the beginning of something that felt dangerously like love. Chapter 6. The Truth Beneath Names. They emerged from the catacombs on the third night to find Thornwood Manor ransacked. Lucian guided Ilara through the destruction with a hand at her elbow, describing what she couldn't see. Overturned furniture, shattered porcelain, books torn from shelves and scattered like fallen leaves. House Corvus had systematically dismantled his sanctuary, searching for something. The Hall of Names, Lucian said suddenly, his voice tight. They were looking for my records. Records? Every vampire house maintains genealogies, names, lineages, weaknesses. He pulled her toward the east wing, their footsteps crunching over broken glass. The old ones are paranoid about preservation. We document everything. A pause. Including true names. Ice flooded Ilara's stomach. You kept records of other vampires' true names? Not willingly. My mother collected them as protection. Insurance against the house wars. They entered a room that smelled of char and smoke. But Corvus doesn't know I burned those records decades ago. They think they can find leverage here. Names to control other houses and expand their power. Ilara's supernatural sense flared, catching something beneath the ash smell. They left someone behind. What? There. She pointed toward what her sensitivity identified as a void space, a cold presence attempting to mask itself. Hidden. Watching. Lucian moved with inhuman speed. A crash, a startled curse, and suddenly he was dragging someone into the center of the room. Clever, he said coldly. How long have you been hiding in my walls, little Corvus? Long enough. The voice belonged to a young woman, though her age was deceiving. Vampires could be centuries old yet appear barely 20. We know the Thorn Girl is still here, and we know you're weakened. It's only a matter of time. Tell your masters they can rot in hell, Lucian said. Tell them yourself. The vampire smiled. Ilara could hear it in her voice. Because they're coming. Tomorrow night, and they're bringing someone who's very interested in meeting the last Thorn Seer. Who? Ilara stepped forward, ignoring Lucian's warning grip. Her supernatural sense pressed against the vampire, seeking truth. Who wants me specifically? Lord Matthias Corvus. Pride colored the woman's tone. The Patriarch's great-grandson. He spent a century researching your bloodline, waiting for the old seer to spawn another generation. And now, she laughed, now you've delivered yourself into our territory, bonded yourself to a weakened vampire, and isolated yourself from any possible help. He's quite pleased. What does he want from me? Ilara asked. Your gift. Your blood. Your ability to perceive true names. The vampire's voice dropped to something hungry. The Thorn Seers don't just identify names, you can rewrite them. Unbind vampires from their true names entirely, making them impossible to control. Or, she paused meaningfully, bind them more tightly than any magic ever could. The implications crashed over Ilara. My grandmother couldn't do that. She never needed to. She was content to identify and execute. The vampire shifted, and Ilara heard chains rattle. Lucian had bound her. But you? Lord Matthias believes you have the potential for so much more. He wants you to unbind him, free him from his true name's vulnerability. And in exchange, he'll kill everyone I care about if I refuse. Ilara finished flatly. Smart girl. Lucian's rage blazed through their bond, but he controlled it with visible effort. What makes Matthias think she'll cooperate? Because we have leverage. The vampire's smile turned vicious. There's a village 12 miles south. 63 humans living in blissful ignorance of the predators in their midst. Lord Matthias is currently residing there, and if Ilara doesn't surrender herself by tomorrow's midnight... She trailed off, letting the threat hang. He'll slaughter them all, Ilara whispered. He'll turn them first. Create 63 new vampires bound to House Corvus, unleash them on neighboring villages, and spark the largest vampire outbreak in 2 centuries. The woman laughed. The crown will be forced to respond. Hunters will come, and in the chaos, Corvus will expand its territory unchallenged. Silence filled the ruined hall. Through their bond, Ilara felt Lucian's horror. His fury, and beneath it, his desperate search for a solution that didn't end with her captured and the village massacred. There has to be another way, he said. There isn't. Ilara turned toward him. But I have an idea. It requires trusting me completely. Ilara, no, listen. She caught his hand, squeezing tight. My grandmother identified true names by seeing blood signatures. She observed vampires and deciphered their names through supernatural sight. Her supernatural sense expanded, pressing against the Corvus vampire. But my gift is different. I perceive essential truth, who someone is beneath their flesh. And right now I'm perceiving her true name. The vampire gasped. That's impossible. You're blind. You can't see that I don't need sight. Ilara smiled slowly. Your name is written in the very essence of what you are, and I can read it as clearly as others read books. She spoke, and power thrummed through the words. Marianne Corvus, blood daughter of the fallen patriarch, turned in 1891 at age 19. The vampire screamed. Lucian's shock blazed through their bond. How? She can unbind or bind any vampire she perceives, Ilara said calmly. That's what Matthias wants. But he doesn't understand. The gift works both ways. She turned her blind eyes toward where she sensed the vampire's struggling presence. I can identify true names, yes, but I can also hide them, make a vampire invisible to name magic, shielded from binding. You can protect vampires from control, Lucian breathed. Make them immune? Exactly. Ilara squeezed his hand. So here's my plan. We go to the village. We meet Matthias. And I protect every vampire he's ever threatened, including you, from his schemes. I make it so he can never control another of your kind again. And then, Ilara said softly, we make him regret hunting thorn women. Chapter 7. The journey to midnight, they left Thornwood at dusk, traveling light and fast. Lucian carried Ilara when the terrain grew too treacherous for her to navigate with a walking stick. She'd protested initially, but their bond made such pride obsolete. She could feel that carrying her wasn't burden but comfort, a tangible reminder that she was safe. They'd bound Marianne Corvus with iron chains and left her in the catacombs. House Corvus will find her eventually, Lucian had said. But by then, this will be finished. The forest thinned as they traveled, giving way to farmland and country roads. Lucian described what she couldn't see. Autumn fields under moonlight, villages sleeping in the distance, the stars wheeling overhead in patterns that had remained constant across his 3 centuries. Tell me about being human, Ilara said as they paused beside a stream. What do you miss most? Lucian knelt, filling a flask with water for her. Sunrise, the warmth of daylight on skin. He handed her the flask. aging, the sense that time mattered because it was finite. You could end it. The words came quietly. Vampires can die if they choose. Walk into sunrise, refuse to feed. I've considered it. His honesty rippled through their bond, more than once over the centuries. But something always stopped me. He paused. Recently I've realized what? What? Hope. His cold hand found hers. The possibility that immortality doesn't have to mean eternal loneliness. That perhaps someday someone would see past the monster to what remains of the man. His thumb traced her knuckles. You've given me more in 5 days than I've felt in 97 years. Ilara's heart clenched. I'm just a blind woman running from her past. You're the bravest person I've ever met. He lifted her hand to his lips, a gesture from his human century, and kissed her palm. And you make me want to be worthy of that courage. They resumed walking, the silence between them comfortable now. Through their bond, Ilara felt Lucian's emotions clearly. Determination threaded with fear, protectiveness warring with respect for her agency. He was terrified of losing her but trusted her plan. Teach me about vampire houses, she said after a while. If I'm to face Matthias, I should understand his world. Very well. Lucian's voice slipped into the formal cadence of a lecturer. Vampire society is organized into houses. Bloodlines descended from the original old ones who created us. House Ashford was founded in 1243, House Corvus in 1198. There were once 23 great houses, but wars and time have reduced us to 7. What determines a house's power? Territory, mostly. How much land they control, how many humans fall under their protection, and leverage, true names, blood oaths, ancient debts. He paused. House Corvus was once the most powerful in England. Your grandmother's testimony destroyed that. She identified their patriarch's true name, allowed him to be bound and executed for war crimes. So they want revenge on me for her actions. And they want to ensure no Thorn Seer ever threatens them again. His grip tightened on her hand. Matthias is smart, Ilara. Cruel, yes, but brilliant. He's spent a century studying your bloodline, looking for weaknesses. If he's coming personally, then he believes he can control me. Ilara smiled grimly. He doesn't know I've bonded with you, that I carry your true name willingly. That bond is our advantage. He'll expect you to be defenseless, but through me, you can access House Ashford's power. Lucian stopped walking. Ilara, what I'm about to offer, you can refuse. The bond allows it. What? My blood. If you drink it directly, you'll temporarily gain vampire abilities. Enhanced hearing, strength, speed. He paused. It won't turn you. That requires death and intention. But it will give you advantages against Corvus. The offer settled between them, heavy with implication. Through their bond, Ilara felt his uncertainty. Offering his blood felt too close to coercion, even with consent. Will it hurt? She asked. No. My blood will taste sweet to you because of the bond. His voice dropped. But Ilara, you should know. Drinking vampire blood creates euphoria, heightened sensation. It's why humans become addicted. I won't offer again after tonight. She understood what he wasn't saying. The blood would feel too good, create dependency. This was a one-time gift. I trust you, she said simply, and I'll need every advantage against Matthias. Lucian's emotions crashed through their bond. Gratitude, desire, and something painful that felt like devotion. He drew his knife, cut his palm, and offered it to her. Drink slowly. His blood tasted like copper and midnight and something indefinably him. Power flooded her system immediately, cold fire racing through her veins. And with it came sensation. Lucian's heartbeat synchronizing with hers, his ancient strength flowing into her mortal frame. She gasped as her senses exploded. Suddenly she could hear everything. Insects in the grass, distant heartbeats in sleeping villages, the rustle of owl wings miles away. She could smell the vampire scent clinging to Lucian's skin, the iron in earth, the approaching rain. This is how you experience the world, she whispered, awed. Every moment. For 347 years. His arms came around her as she swayed. It will last until sunrise. Use it well. They stood together in the moonlight, two broken creatures learning to be whole, and when Alara rose on tiptoe to kiss him, truly kiss him, not the chaste brush of lips from before, Lucian responded with centuries of loneliness transmuted into tenderness. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered against his mouth. "I'm not afraid of what's coming. And I'm not afraid of this." "I know," he said. "That's what terrifies me most." But his arms tightened around her, and through their bond she felt the truth. He wouldn't trade this terror for all the peace in eternity. Chapter 8. The Covenant of Blood. The village appeared peaceful under moonlight, until they drew closer. With her temporary vampire senses, Alara could detect what human eyes would miss, the absolute silence. No heartbeats, no breathing. The scent of blood hung in the air like morning fog. "They're all turned," Lucian said grimly. The entire village. He kept his word. He created new vampires. But something felt wrong. Alara's supernatural sense expanded, and she realized the truth. They're not vampires. Not yet. They're suspended between life and death. He's holding them on the threshold. A blood binding. Horror colored Lucian's voice. He's forcing them to hover in the turning process. They're conscious but paralyzed, experiencing the agony of transformation without completion. It's torture. And leverage. Alara's jaw clenched. He won't complete or reverse the turning until I surrender. They found Matthias Corvus in the village church. Irony, apparently, appealed to him. He sat in the priest's chair, a man of perhaps 30 in appearance but ancient in presence. Alara's enhanced senses catalogued him. Ice-cold, powerful, and threaded through with cruelty that had calcified into his essential nature. "Miss Thorne." His voice carried the aristocratic polish of old money and older evil. "How delightful that you've come voluntarily, and you've brought the last Ashford. How nostalgic." "Release the villagers," Alara said. "They're not part of this." "Oh, but they are. They're the reminder that vampire-human relations require delicate balance." Matthias rose, his movement serpentine. "Your grandmother disrupted that balance. She gave humans the power to identify and execute vampires based on testimony alone. The House Wars ended, yes, but at the cost of vampire sovereignty." "You mean at the cost of your ability to prey unchecked," Lucian said coldly. "Prey, protect, rule. The semantics hardly matter." Matthias circled them. "What matters is that Miss Thorne possesses a gift that could reshape vampire society. She can identify true names through perception alone. And if my research is correct," his eyes fixed on Alara, "she can do so much more. I won't unbind you." Alara kept her voice steady. "I won't give you immunity from name magic. You will, because I'm about to demonstrate what happens when you refuse." Matthias gestured, and 6 vampires emerged from the shadows, his house guard, moving with predatory grace. "You see, Miss Thorne, your gift isn't unique to you. It's in your blood, your very essence. And blood, well, blood can be harvested." Ice flooded her stomach. "You want to drink my blood? See if the gift transfers. Not just drink. Drain." Matthias smiled. "I'll bleed you slowly, keep you conscious, and discover if vampire consumption of seer blood grants us the same abilities. If it does, and I believe it will, I'll create an entire generation of vampires who can perceive and manipulate true names." He paused. "Imagine it. Vampires immune to binding, able to enslave other vampires at will. House Corvus would become unstoppable." "Over my corpse," Lucian snarled. "That can be arranged." Matthias nodded to his guards. "Kill Ashford. Take the girl alive," the vampires attacked, but Alara had spent the journey preparing. Her hand closed around Lucian's signet ring, still on her thumb, and she spoke with power thrumming through the words. "I see you. All of you, your true names written in your essence." The attacking vampires froze. "Marcus Corvus," Alara said, her supernatural sense identifying each in turn. "Bloodline of 1847. Sophia Corvus, turned 1901. Edmund, Thomas, Jane." She spoke each name, and with each word, power crystallized. I bind you not to servitude but to truth. You will not harm innocents. You will not create new vampires without consent. You will remember what it means to be human." The vampires collapsed, screaming. Their true names, spoken with seer authority, had rewritten something fundamental in their nature. They weren't enslaved. Alara had sworn never to do that. But they were bound to ethical constraints they couldn't violate. Matthias stared, shock breaking through his cold control. "Impossible. You can't bind multiple vampires simultaneously. No seer has ever—" "My grandmother worked alone," Alara interrupted. "I'm bonded to Lucian Ashford, connected to his bloodline's power. And through that bond," she smiled, "I can do what she never could. Then I'll kill you myself." Matthias moved with inhuman speed. Lucian met him halfway. They collided with a sound like thunder, two ancient vampires unleashing centuries of power. Alara felt Lucian's determination through their bond. He was buying her time. She didn't waste it. Her supernatural sense expanded, pressing against Matthias even as he fought. Finding his true name was harder. He'd lived longer, accumulated more layers of identity. But underneath the cruelty, the ambition, the centuries of violence, she found it. A boy who'd watched his great-grandfather burn, who'd been turned in grief and rage, who'd spent a century seeking revenge. "Matthias Alexander Corvus," she said quietly. "Born 1801, turned 1889. You've spent 136 years hating the woman who spoke truth about your family's crimes." Matthias froze. Lucian staggered back, wounded but alive. "I could unbind you," Alara continued. "Free you from your true name's power. Make you immune to control." She paused. "But I won't, because you'd use that freedom to enslave others. Instead," she took a breath, "I'm going to show you mercy." "Mercy?" He spat the word. "I'm going to free the villagers from their suspended turning, return them to human life unharmed." Her voice hardened. "And I'm going to bind you to a single law. You will never create vampires without their full, informed, enthusiastic consent. You will never force humans into servitude. You will never turn innocents into weapons." Power exploded outward. Matthias screamed as the binding took hold, rewriting constraints into his very nature. In the village, 63 humans gasped as they were released from the edge of death, returned to their mortal lives with no memory of the horror. When silence returned, Matthias knelt in the church, defeated. "Go," Alara said tiredly. "Tell the other houses what happened here. Tell them the Thorn Seer has returned, and she doesn't execute vampires. She teaches them ethics." Matthias fled into the night, his remaining vampires following. Lucian caught Alara as she collapsed. "That was the most foolish, brilliant, terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Did it work? You just reshaped vampire law single-handedly." He laughed shakily. "Yes, it worked." She smiled against his shoulder. "Good, because I don't think I can do that again." "You won't have to," he promised. "I've got you," and through their bond, she felt the truth. He always would. Chapter 9. The Breaking of Dawn. Word spread through the vampire houses with supernatural speed. They came at dawn, not to attack, but to negotiate. Alara woke in the village's abandoned inn, Lucian's cold body wrapped protectively around hers. Through their bond, she felt his alertness despite his stillness. He'd been awake all night watching for threats. "They're here," he murmured. 7 vampires. Representatives from 6 houses. 6? Alara sat up, rubbing her eyes. The temporary vampire abilities had faded with sunrise, leaving her blind and mortal once more. "I thought there were 7 great houses." "There are. I'm the 7th, House Ashford, and they want to speak with us both." They met in the church where Matthias had fallen. Alara's supernatural sense catalogued each vampire. Ancient presences, cold and powerful, but beneath their predatory nature, she detected something unexpected. "Fear, Miss Thorne." The speaker was female, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "I am Catherine, matriarch of House Winters. I speak for the assembled houses when I say, we wish to negotiate terms." "Terms?" Alara's hand found Lucian's, grounding herself. "For what?" "For the survival of vampire society." Another voice, male, and rough. "I'm Marcus of House Sterling. What you did to Corvus, binding him to ethical constraints without enslaving him, it's unprecedented. And it terrifies us." "Good," Alara said flatly. "You should be terrified. For centuries, you've treated humans as prey, as cattle, as resources to exploit. My grandmother tried to end that through execution. I'm offering an alternative." "Reformation," Catherine said slowly. "You want to reform vampire society." "I want to end the paradigm of predator and prey." Alara's voice strengthened. "Vampires need human blood to survive, that's biology. But it doesn't require violence. Lucian has existed for decades on consensual arrangements. Paid donors, willing participants." She paused. "If he can do it, so can you." Silence filled the church. Through their bond, Alara felt Lucian's pride radiating like heat. "And if we refuse?" Marcus asked. "Then I do to you what I did to Matthias. I bind you to ethics you can't violate." Alara's supernatural sense pressed against them, and they all flinched. "I can perceive every vampire in this church. I know your true names, and if necessary, I will rewrite the fundamental laws governing your existence." "That's tyranny," someone hissed. "No. Tyranny is what you've practiced for centuries. Preying on humans without consequence. Turning innocents into vampires without consent. Waging wars that devastate mortal populations." Alara's jaw set. "I'm offering you a choice. Reform voluntarily, or be reformed involuntarily. But the age of unchecked vampire predation ends today." More silence. Then Catherine laughed, a sound like breaking ice. "You're just like your grandmother. She brought us to our knees with testimony. You're doing it with ultimatums." "My grandmother believed in execution," Alara corrected. "I believe in redemption. But I'll use force if necessary to protect human lives." "We need time," Marcus said, "to reorganize our houses, establish new protocols." "You have 1 year," Lucian interrupted, his voice carrying ancient authority. 1 year to demonstrate good faith reforms. Consensual feeding arrangements. No forced turnings. No human thralls." He paused. "And in exchange, Miss Thorne will establish a registry. Vampires who comply with new ethics will have their true names protected. Hidden from hostile magic, shielded from binding." The assembled vampires stirred. "You'd protect us?" Catherine asked. "I'd protect vampires who prove they're not monsters," Alara said. "Who choose to coexist with humans rather than dominate them. That protection extends to their bloodlines. Immunity from name binding for those who honor the covenant. And those who refuse will be bound to ethics involuntarily. Or," Alara's voice went cold, "executed if they prove too dangerous to reform." The negotiation continued for hours. Lucian explained practical details. How consensual feeding arrangements could be organized. How houses could establish legitimate businesses that served as fronts for paid donor systems. How vampire-human relations could be restructured around mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Alara added the supernatural framework. She would teach select humans to identify vampires through the sight, creating a check on vampire power without requiring wholesale execution. She would maintain a registry of compliant vampires, protecting their true names, and she would bind any vampire who violated the new covenant. "This is revolution," Catherine said finally. "You're dismantling a system that's existed since the first vampire walked the earth." "Yes," Alara agreed. "I am, because that system is built on suffering, and it ends now." One by one, the House representatives agreed. They would return to their territories, begin reforms, and meet again in 1 year to demonstrate progress. As they departed, Catherine approached Alara. "Your grandmother would be proud," she said quietly. "She broke our power through exposure. You're rebuilding it through ethics. That's," she paused, "clever. And dangerous. Dangerous for who?" Alara asked. "For you, child. You've made yourself indispensable to vampire survival." Catherine's cold hand briefly touched Alara's cheek. "That makes you invaluable, and a target. There will always be vampires who reject reform, who hunt you to preserve the old ways." "Let them come," Lucian said, his arm sliding around Alara's waist. "They'll face House Ashford, and House Ashford protects its own." After the vampires left, Alara and Lucian stood alone in the church. Dawnlight filtered through stained glass. casting colors she couldn't see but could feel as warmth on her skin. "You realize what you've done?" Lucian asked softly. "You've appointed yourself the architect of a new vampire age." "We've appointed ourselves," she corrected. "This only works if we do it together." Together. He turned her to face him. "Ilara, that means... You understand what I'm offering? Immortality, partnership, an eternity of reforming monsters and dodging assassination attempts." She smiled. "Yes, I understand. And you want that?" "I want you," she said simply. "The rest is just details." Chapter 10. The Covenant Eternal. 3 nights later, Ilara stood in Thornwood Manor's restored library, Lucien's hands cool against her face. "Are you certain?" he asked for the 100th time. "Once you're turned, there's no reversal. You'll be vampire, immortal, bound to blood and night." "I'm certain." Ilara's hands covered his. "I've spent my whole life blind, stumbling through a world that saw me as broken. You've shown me I was never broken. I just perceived differently." She smiled. "And now I'll perceive eternity differently. With you. The process will hurt," he warned. "I'll have to drain you to the edge of death, then feed you my blood. The transformation takes 3 days. You'll experience every myth you've ever heard. The burning, the hunger, the death of your human self." "I know." She'd researched thoroughly, interviewed Catherine Winters about her own turning. "And I still choose this." Lucian's emotions crashed through their bond, joy, terror, and overwhelming love. "Then we do this properly. With ceremony, with witnesses." Catherine and Marcus had returned as representatives, a gesture of goodwill from the houses. They stood in the library's shadows, observing as Lucien led Ilara to the center of a ritual circle he'd prepared. "The old ways required a vampire to claim a human as property," Lucien said, his voice formal. "But we're building new ways. So I offer you a choice, Ilara Thorn. Join me not as subject, but as equal. Not as possession, but as partner. Share my immortality, my house, my name, not because you're bound to, but because you choose to." "I choose you," Ilara said clearly. "I choose this. I choose us." The ritual began. Lucien's bite was gentle despite the violence of what followed. Ilara felt her life draining away, felt her heartbeat slowing, her breath growing shallow. At the edge of death, she perceived something she'd never seen before. The boundary between mortal and immortal, a threshold shimmering with possibility. Then Lucien's blood filled her mouth, cold and sweet and burning with ancient power. The transformation began. She burned. For 3 days, her body consumed itself and rebuilt, human cells dying to make room for something new. Through the agony, she felt Lucien's presence. He stayed with her every moment, holding her through the worst of it, whispering encouragement through their bond. On the 3rd night, Ilara woke. Everything was different. She was still blind, but her supernatural sense had magnified exponentially. She could perceive the entire manor now. Every room, every person, their emotional landscapes mapped in her mind like a 3-dimensional tapestry, and Lucien. She could feel him with crystal clarity. His love, his relief, his joy. "Welcome back," he whispered, pulling her into his arms. "How do you feel?" "Alive," she laughed at the irony. "More alive than I ever was mortal." They emerged from her room to find Catherine and Marcus waiting. "The first vampire's here," Catherine said. "This will change everything." "It already has," Ilara replied. "Now we have work to do." Epilogue. 5 years later, the Ashford Institute opened its doors. The estate had been transformed into a sanctuary, a place where humans and vampires met on equal terms. Paid donors received medical care and education. Young vampires learned ethical feeding. Researchers studied vampire biology, seeking ways to reduce blood dependence. Ilara walked through the halls with Lucien at her side, still blind but navigating with supernatural precision. Her registry had grown to include over 200 vampires, those who'd chosen reform over extinction. And the humans she'd trained as seers worked alongside them, monitoring compliance without violence. "Letter from Catherine," Lucien said. handing her an envelope she couldn't read but could perceive through its emotional residue. House Winters has established consensual feeding arrangements across their entire territory. She's requesting your presence to train new seers. We'll go next month. Elara smiled. After we finish establishing the donor program in London. They paused at the library window, the same window where they'd first spoken about fear and monsters. Lucian pulled her close, and through their bond, Elara felt his contentment. His peace. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Choosing immortality? Choosing this life? Elara turned in his arms, her blind eyes meeting his. I chose you, she said. Everything else is just the adventure that came with it. Even the assassination attempts? Especially those. She grinned. They keep things interesting. He laughed. That genuine, unrestrained sound she'd first drawn from him in the catacombs, and kissed her. Around them, the Institute hummed with life, humans and vampires learning to coexist, building a future neither species had imagined possible. And in that moment, Elara understood the truth her grandmother had never grasped. Monsters weren't destroyed through execution. They were transformed through choice, redeemed through relationship, and reformed through love. She'd walked into Thornwood Forest a blind girl fleeing her past. She'd walked out a vampire seer, unafraid, building a future where the most feared creatures in history learned to fear their own darkness more than humanity's light. I'm not scared of you, she whispered against Lucian's lips, the words that had started everything. I know, he whispered back. That's what saved us both. And in the library where his mother had once dreamed of healing, where he had once studied alone for centuries, they stood together, immortal, equal, and finally home.